Operation Finale stands as one of the most consequential intelligence operations of the 20th century, culminating in the capture, trial, and execution of Adolf Eichmann, a central administrator of the Holocaust and one of the most elusive Nazi fugitives after the Second World War. Eichmann had served as a senior SS officer in Nazi Germany and was instrumental in organizing the logistics of the so-called final solution, the systematic deportation of millions of Jews from across Europe to ghettos, concentration camps, and extermination facilities. While he was not the ideological originator of genocide, his role as a coordinator and facilitator made him indispensable to the machinery of mass murder. By managing transport schedules, negotiating with occupied governments, and overseeing the bureaucratic processes that enabled deportations, Eichmann transformed ideological hatred into administrative reality. When Nazi Germany collapsed in 1945, many high-ranking officials were captured and prosecuted at the Nuremberg trials, but Eichmann managed to evade immediate justice. In the chaos of defeat, he was briefly detained by American forces but escaped from a prisoner of war camp in 1946. For several years he lived in hiding within Germany under false papers, assisted by networks that helped former Nazis avoid prosecution. By 1950 he had secured passage to Argentina using forged identity documents, adopting the name Ricardo Clement. Argentina at the time had become a destination for numerous former Nazis and collaborators, due in part to sympathetic elements within the government and the absence of rigorous immigration controls. Eichmann initially worked in manual labor jobs and later found employment at a Mercedes-Benz facility near Buenos Aires. He lived modestly with his wife Vera and their children, residing in working-class neighborhoods and maintaining a low profile. For over a decade, his whereabouts remained uncertain, and although rumors circulated among survivors and investigators, no definitive proof of his location emerged. The unresolved question of Eichmann's fate weighed heavily on Holocaust survivors and on the newly established State of Israel, founded in 1948 in the aftermath of genocide. Bringing a major architect of the Holocaust to justice carried profound symbolic importance for Israel, not only as a matter of retribution but also as an affirmation of historical memory and legal accountability. The decisive lead emerged in 1957, when Dr. Fritz Bauer, the Attorney General of the German state of Hesse, received information from Lothar Hermann, a Jewish émigré living in Argentina who had survived Nazi persecution and had been blinded during imprisonment in the Dachau concentration camp. Hermann's daughter, Sylvia, had begun dating a young man named Klaus Eichmann. During their courtship, Klaus made remarks expressing pride in his father's wartime role and lamenting that Germany had not completed its campaign against the Jews. Alarmed by these statements, Sylvia relayed them to her father. Hermann grew suspicious that Klaus's father might be Adolf Eichmann. Conducting quiet inquiries despite his blindness, Hermann identified an address associated with the family and conveyed his suspicions to Bauer. Bauer faced a delicate situation. Although committed to prosecuting Nazi criminals, he harbored concerns about whether elements within West German institutions might leak the information or fail to act decisively. Distrusting the willingness of certain officials to pursue Eichmann vigorously, Bauer discreetly contacted Israeli authorities, providing them with the intelligence. Mossad chief Isser Harel received the message and initiated preliminary inquiries. Early investigations were inconclusive and complicated by confusion over aliases and property ownership. At one stage, Mossad temporarily closed the case, judging the evidence insufficiently reliable. However, Bauer persisted, emphasizing Hermann's credibility and the plausibility of the lead. Continued intelligence gathering revealed that a man named Ricardo Clement lived in a suburb of Buenos Aires, and that the household included family members whose names corresponded with those of Eichmann's wife and sons. Property records indicated connections to Vera Eichmann, strengthening suspicions. By early 1960, Mossad reopened the investigation with renewed determination. A specialized team of operatives was assembled, including experienced agents skilled in surveillance, documentation, interrogation, and covert extraction. Zviaharoni, a capable investigator with deep familiarity with Nazi-era records, was dispatched to Argentina to confirm the suspect's identity. Operating under false identities and cover professions, agents established safe houses and communication protocols to avoid detection. They carefully studied the layout of the neighborhood on Garibaldi Street where Clement resided, observing bus routes, lighting patterns, pedestrian traffic, and escape possibilities. Surveillance required patience and precision. Any sign of suspicion could prompt the target to vanish once more. Agents monitored the routine of the man believed to be Eichmann over several weeks. He followed a predictable schedule, commuting by bus from his workplace to his modest home. Though the years had altered his appearance, his height, build, facial structure, and posture were compared with archival photographs and wartime documents, revealing strong similarities. Agents also scrutinized official records, confirming that the property was linked to Vera Eichmann under variations of her maiden and married names. The convergence of physical evidence, documentation, and behavioral patterns gradually convinced the team that Ricardo Clement was indeed Adolf Eichmann. The operation, however, required absolute certainty. A mistake in capture would risk severe diplomatic repercussions and undermine Israel's credibility. The capture plan centered on intercepting Eichmann during his evening walk from the bus stop to his home, when the street was dimly lit and sparsely populated. The chosen date was May 11, 1960. Several agents positioned themselves strategically along the route. One vehicle was parked with its hood raised to simulate mechanical trouble, providing a plausible explanation for agents standing nearby. Another car waited to transport the captive quickly to a secure location. Timing and coordination were critical. If Eichmann sensed danger or if neighbors intervened, the operation could collapse. Shortly after 8 p.m., a bus arrived and Eichmann stepped off, walking toward his house. An agent approached him and addressed him briefly in Spanish to distract him. Within seconds, other agents lunged, forcing him to the ground and subduing him with coordinated force. He was quickly bundled into the waiting vehicle. The encounter lasted less than a minute, minimizing the chance of witnesses. Eichmann was transported to a safe house where agents conducted a thorough search to ensure he possessed no concealed weapons or poison capsules. Interrogation began almost immediately. Confronted with detailed knowledge of his biography, including dates of birth, SS membership numbers, and assignments, he initially maintained the alias Ricardo Clement and offered alternative false names. The precision of the questions, however, indicated that denial was futile. Eventually, he admitted in a subdued voice that he was Adolf Eichmann. The confirmation marked the culmination of years of pursuit and decades of evasion. The extraction phase presented complex diplomatic and logistical challenges. Argentina had not authorized the arrest, and removing Eichmann from its territory without consent constituted a violation of sovereignty. Israeli authorities prepared for potential international backlash. During the 9 days between capture and departure, Eichmann was held in secrecy. Agents ensured his physical condition remained stable, both to maintain control and to prepare him for trial. He signed a statement declaring his willingness to stand trial in Israel, a document intended to mitigate accusations of unlawful abduction. Though the voluntariness of this declaration has been debated by scholars. The extraction plan relied on an Israeli airline flight that had officially brought a delegation to Argentina for celebrations marking the country's independence anniversary. On May 20, 1960, Eichmann was sedated to reduce resistance but kept conscious enough to pass superficial inspection. Dressed in an airline crew uniform and wearing dark glasses, he was escorted onto the aircraft as though he were an ill staff member. The plane departed without incident. Once airborne over international waters, the risk of interception diminished. Upon arrival in Israel, Eichmann was transferred to a specially prepared high-security detention facility. Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion publicly announced the capture, declaring that Adolf Eichmann would stand trial in Jerusalem. The announcement reverberated globally. Many nations expressed approval that a major Nazi criminal had finally been apprehended. Argentina formally protested the violation of its sovereignty and brought the matter before the United Nations Security Council. Diplomatic negotiations followed, culminating in a resolution acknowledging Argentina's complaint and Israel's expression of regret, while leaving Eichmann in Israeli custody. The episode highlighted the tension between national sovereignty and the pursuit of accountability for crimes of global significance. The trial commenced in April 1961 in Jerusalem, in a converted auditorium equipped to accommodate international media coverage. For security reasons, Eichmann sat inside a bulletproof glass enclosure, an image that became emblematic of the proceedings. The prosecution presented extensive documentation demonstrating Eichmann's central role in coordinating deportations from Hungary, Poland, France, the Netherlands, and other countries. Survivors testified in emotionally powerful accounts of deportations, forced labor, and extermination. The trial thus served not only as a legal proceeding against an individual but also as a comprehensive public examination of the Holocaust's bureaucratic mechanisms. Eichmann's defense strategy centered on the claim that he had been a mere functionary following orders within a rigid hierarchy. He argued that he lacked authority to alter policy and had acted under compulsion. The court scrutinized this defense against documentary evidence showing his initiative, negotiation skills, and active role in facilitating deportations. Judges concluded that he had exercised significant responsibility and moral agency. In December 1961, the court found him guilty of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes against the Jewish people, sentencing him to death. Appeals and petitions for clemency were submitted but ultimately rejected. On May 31, 1962, Eichmann was executed by hanging at Ramla prison, marking the only instance of capital punishment carried out in Israel's history. His body was cremated, and his ashes were scattered at sea beyond Israel's territorial waters to prevent the establishment of a grave that could serve as a site of extremist commemoration. Operation Finale had far-reaching implications beyond the fate of one individual. It reignited global attention to the Holocaust at a time when public discourse had often been muted. The trial generated an extensive historical record, preserving survivor testimony and documentary evidence for future generations. It also influenced the development of international legal principles related to crimes against humanity and universal jurisdiction, reinforcing the idea that perpetrators of genocide could be pursued across borders and decades. For Israel, the operation affirmed a commitment to historical memory and justice. For survivors, the trial provided recognition and validation of experiences that had sometimes been marginalized. For the international community, the operation became a case study in the ethical and legal complexities of extraterritorial capture. It demonstrated the capacity of intelligence services to execute complex operations with precision, while also provoking debate about the balance between sovereignty and accountability. The broader historical context underscores the significance of the mission. In the immediate post-war years, many perpetrators evaded justice, and Cold War geopolitics often overshadowed the pursuit of Nazi criminals. Operation Finale symbolized a renewed determination to address unfinished aspects of post-war accountability. It demonstrated that time and distance would not necessarily shield perpetrators from consequences. The capture and trial of Eichmann reinforced the principle that obedience to orders does not absolve individuals of responsibility for participation in atrocities. The case continues to be studied by historians, legal scholars, ethicists, and intelligence professionals. It represents a convergence of intelligence gathering, diplomatic maneuvering, legal innovation, and moral resolve. Decades after its execution, Operation Finale remains a defining episode in the history of international justice, illustrating that even the most elusive architects of mass murder can be located, identified, and held accountable before the law, and affirming a broader commitment to confronting crimes against humanity regardless of how much time has passed or how far perpetrators have fled.